Unable to move due to a high fever, I asked my eldest son, Michael, to bring me a glass of water. I thought he would do at least that much for me, but what Michael brought was a glass of beer instead. Then, he proceeded to splash that beer on me, lying in bed with a high fever. From the direction of the door, I heard giggling and saw Susan clapping and laughing. Michael, standing in front of me, was holding the empty glass and laughing with her. I couldn't believe it. Even though I was dizzy from the fever, that scene was vividly burned into my memory. Make sure the house is clean by the time I return. Until now, I had tolerated the whims of my eldest son and his wife, but I couldn't stand it anymore. Yes, I'll make sure it's clean. Despite my sore throat, I made sure my words were loud enough for my eldest son and his wife to hear. My name is Emily. I'm a 73-year-old homemaker. My husband, Brian, is 75. Now retired, he teaches calligraphy to children at a nearby community center. Having pursued calligraphy since his youth, it was my husband's dream to open a calligraphy class after retirement. Seeing him head to the community center every day, happy to fulfill his dream, brought me joy too. We have 2 sons. Our younger son, David, is married with 2 elementary school-aged children, but our 44-year-old eldest son, Michael, was unmarried and lived with us at home. He seemed to be working part-time at a convenience store at night, but only about 4 days a week, contributing no money to the household and leading an aimless life. Both my husband and I have warned him several times, but Michael never took it to heart. He's not into gambling or debt. Gradually, both my husband and I stopped nagging him about it. Then one day, out of the blue, Michael declared, we got married, bringing home his wife, Susan, without any prior introduction. She entered our home without even greeting us, and from that day on, I found myself preparing meals for Susan as well. I didn't mind preparing meals for her, but she neither helped around the house nor cleaned up after herself. She never thanked us, and even demanded coffee after meals. Seeing enough, my husband sternly advised the young couple, which made them less demanding in his presence. However, in his absence, even things like, Emily, could you please get this dress dry cleaned for me, became a regular demand. Thinking it was far too selfish, I voiced my concerns, only to have Michael side with his wife. It's just on the way when you go shopping. Don't be so stingy, he said. Despite saying that, Michael hasn't contributed at all to the household expenses, bringing his wife home without asking and both of them living off us without contributing anything. And then demanding more seemed unreasonable to me. I was debating whether to discuss it with my husband or not. But, not wanting to witness a family quarrel, I decided to wait a bit longer and today, again, gave in to Susan's demand, taking her dress for dry cleaning. About twice a year, we visit our younger son and his family living in Washington. We've planned another visit for the upcoming long weekend. Since we often visit, and the younger family occasionally comes to see us, the grandchildren are very fond of us. We've already bought their favorite toys as gifts and plan to buy a cake as a souvenir on our way there. Instead of flying, we usually go by car to enjoy the scenery on our way to see our younger son's family. The view from the plane is nice, but now that we have more time, driving suits us better. The day before our visit, excited beyond my years, I waved goodbye to my husband as he went to his calligraphy class, then set out for shopping. Stopping by a bakery on the way home from the nearby supermarket, I saw handmade cookies for sale. Thinking they would last longer than cake, I bought some for my grandchildren. Imagining their happy faces, I headed home. Then it started to drizzle. As I hurried home, the rain turned into a downpour. I hurried to buy an umbrella at a nearby convenience store, but by the time I arrived, my clothes were already soaked. I thought about taking shelter at the store, but I decided not to, wanting to warm up my chilled body with a hot bath. So I bought an umbrella and rushed home. Upon arriving and intending to bathe, Susan appeared, saying, Emily, were you planning to take a bath now? I have to go out soon. Let me use the bathroom first. Please start preparing dinner in a hurry. Then she closed the bathroom door on me. This isn't your house, I thought, as I reluctantly changed and started preparing dinner. While cooking, I began to sneeze. It would be terrible to catch a cold right before we leave. However, Susan, who loves long baths, didn't come out of the bathroom for over an hour. The morning of the day we were supposed to visit our younger son's family, I woke up feeling sluggish. My throat hurt, and I had a runny nose. When I checked my temperature, it was 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit. It seems I caught a cold from the rain yesterday. Not wanting to pass the cold to my grandchildren, I told my husband to go alone. He suggested canceling the trip, but the grandchildren were waiting. I had also bought gifts for the grandchildren and insisted that he visit our younger son's family alone. Handing over the cookies I had bought at the bakery the day before. My husband was worried about me, but I assured him it was a mild fever and probably just a light cold. And that I would be fine resting at home with some medication. Usually, my husband doesn't speak much to my eldest son and his wife, but that day, he informed the waking couple of my poor health and made them promise to take care of the household chores. After sending off my worried husband with a smile, as I was about to return to bed, I overheard a conversation between my eldest son and his wife. Ugh, such a hassle. It's just a cold, isn't it? But with Brian gone, we can do as we please for a bit. It's unbelievable to hear such lines from people who live off us without contributing to the household expenses. But it's typical behavior in front of me. Don't you realize that you're able to live here because of your father? I admonished them, which seemed to annoy them as Michael retorted, "We're living with the old folks as a favor to you." His wife added, "Exactly. Most people would hate living with their spouse's parents." Despite them moving in uninvited, my eldest son and his wife had the audacity to say such things. However, wanting to rest due to my sluggishness, I ignored their words and returned to my room. That evening, Susan came into my room and woke me up. "Emily, do you intend not to cook just because you feel a bit under the weather? You know I can't cook, right?" A 35-year-old woman shouldn't be saying such things to her mother-in-law, demanding meals just because she can't cook. Since I'm not feeling well, I wish they would manage their own meals. I know my husband warned my eldest son and his wife about this before he left in the morning. I tried to ignore her and go back to sleep. Susan wouldn't leave the room. Thinking I should eat something light before taking medicine, I forced my weary body up and headed to the kitchen to cook. Michael returned while I was preparing the meal. He saw me in the kitchen wearing a surgical mask, but he didn't say a word to me, as if it were the most natural thing. Not only that, but he also complained, "Hey, the bath isn't ready yet." To my eldest son and his wife, it didn't matter if I was sick, it doesn't matter to them. Knowing they wouldn't listen to any admonition and wanting to rest sooner, I finished cooking and went to prepare the bath. Returning to the living room, I saw my eldest son and his wife eating and chatting happily. "We're going on an overseas trip the day after tomorrow, so please don't give us your cold," they said. Surprised by the sudden mention of an overseas trip, I ate my meal in the dining room, not the warm living room, as Susan suggested. In the living room, the two of them were excitedly talking about their trip. Michael was taking time off from his part-time job, and they were planning a 3-week trip to Europe. I hadn't heard about my eldest son and his wife's overseas trip, but I was grateful they wouldn't be home for the next few days. The morning they were leaving for their trip, my cold had worsened so much that I couldn't get up. My temperature, measured with a nearby thermometer, was 103.1 degrees Fahrenheit. I was thirsty but couldn't even lift my head due to a severe headache. That's when Michael came to me. "Hey, make some food already. You can still cook even with a cold," he said. Tears almost came to my eyes as my son demanded I cook in such a condition. "Eat out," I told him. Michael frowned at my response but left the room without saying anything. When Michael was leaving the room, I asked him to bring me just a glass of water. I thought he would at least do that much for me, but what Michael brought back was a glass of beer. Then, he splashed that beer on me as I lay in bed with a high fever. From the direction of the door, I heard giggling and saw Susan clapping and laughing. Michael, too, stood in front of me with the empty glass, laughing. I couldn't believe it. Even though I was dizzy from the fever, that scene was vividly imprinted in my mind. Make sure the house is clean by the time I return. I had tolerated my eldest son and his wife's selfishness until now, but I couldn't stand it any longer. "Yes, I'll make sure it's clean." Bearing the pain in my throat, I made sure my words were loud enough for my eldest son and his wife to hear. After they left the house seemingly in good spirits, I didn't have the energy to wipe off the sticky beer from my face and just fell asleep. When I woke up, I felt somewhat refreshed. Though my head was still fuzzy, I remembered Michael splashing beer on me, but surprisingly, I wasn't sticky at all. Even the bedding had been changed to a new one. As I was pondering this, my husband came in with a wash basin. Seeing me sitting up, He rushed over, touched my forehead, and asked, "Are you okay? Why is my husband here? Shouldn't he be with our younger son's family?" I tried to ask, but couldn't find my voice. Realizing what I was trying to say, my husband began to explain. He had gone to visit our younger son's family but returned early because he was worried about me. It seemed unlikely that my eldest son and his wife would take care of anyone, so they were not reliable. My younger son and his wife also said he should return home soon, so he hurried back home. Upon returning home and finding me bedridden and somehow smelling of beer, he quickly wiped my face with a wet towel, cleaned up the surroundings, and had been taking care of me. I had been sleeping for a whole day. When my husband asked what had happened, I tried to explain, but my voice wouldn't come out properly. Remembering Michael pouring beer on me, tears started to flow. Seeing this, my husband brought me some warm water and said, "Sorry, I shouldn't have asked now. Just rest and don't think about anything," before going to prepare some warm soup. He had made soup so that it would be ready whenever I woke up. I cried again at my husband's kindness. Thanks to my husband's care, I started to feel better in about 2 days. When I told my husband about what I had endured from our eldest son and his wife in his absence, he looked grim. "We can't tolerate this any longer." Yeah, me neither. 3 weeks passed since our eldest son and his wife went on their overseas trip. As my husband and I were enjoying peaceful days, my phone rang. It was a call from Michael. "Here we go." I pressed the call button. "What the hell is going on? Why is the house gone? Didn't you say to make the house clean?" After recovering from my cold, I told my husband everything about our eldest son and his wife's actions. They made me do household chores while I was ill. They poured beer on me while I had a high fever and then went on an overseas trip. After hearing my story, my husband muttered, "We can't tolerate this any longer." Until now, I had been calming my husband down, but I no longer felt the need to do so after what had happened. I couldn't forgive them myself. Actually, we had been secretly planning to build a new house and live there just the two of us, without telling our eldest son and his wife. The house wasn't finished yet, but to make a statement, we moved to a monthly rental apartment and sold the house we were living in. The sale was quickly finalized because there had been interest in purchasing the land to build a store. Originally, we planned to keep the old house for our eldest son and his wife, but after such treatment, we felt no need to consider them. The land was already cleared, so they must have been shocked to find the house gone. The new house will be completed in about 2 weeks. A carpenter friend is helping us, allowing us to store our belongings and furniture ahead of time. We disposed of all belongings of our eldest son and his wife. When I mentioned this, Michael threatened, "Don't joke with me. I'll report you to the police." Michael was yelling in the background, and his wife was screeching too. Then my husband asked for the phone, so I put it on speaker and handed to him. "Go ahead and call the police. I'll do the same. You guys left your mother with a high fever after dumping beer on her. Then just went off on an overseas trip, forcing a sick mother to do chores. I wonder whose crime is worse, yours or mine for disposing of your belongings?" My husband's face, as he spoke in a low voice to Michael, looked almost villainous. "That has nothing to do with this. And selling the house, where are we supposed to live now? Where are you guys even staying? The house was originally mine and your mother's. It's our right to sell it. And you're no longer considered a son to us. Don't ever contact us again." My husband said that and then hung up the phone. 2 weeks passed, and we received word that our new house was completed, so we went to see it together. The one who contacted us was my husband's acquaintance, the carpenter Kevin. He is about 60 years old and the site supervisor here. As we toured the house, he explained the interior to us. Considering our future retirement life, it's a single-story, barrier-free house. The house was more wonderful than we had imagined, and we couldn't wait to start our life here. Kevin and his team had moved the furniture we had decided to keep, and when I thanked him, he laughed, saying, "No need to thank me. Brian has helped me a lot in the past, so this is the least I could do." Thus, my husband and I began our life together in this new house. The house was more comfortable than expected, and the absence of my eldest son and his wife made our life together peaceful. However, about a month after moving into our new house, the devilish couple, my eldest son and his wife, showed up. Neither my husband nor I had given them our address, and we had explained the situation to our younger son and his wife. So they shouldn't have known. They must have used a detective or something to find us. Hey, selling the house and disposing of our stuff, then moving yourselves into such a nice place is too much. As the eldest son, I have a right to live here, right? My eldest son and his wife glared at me. They were carrying large bags in both hands. I was appalled to see them intending to live here without doubt, even after we cut out parental ties. Then my husband appeared from the back of the house. What are you doing here? What do you mean? You took our place to live, and now you say that? We're going to live here from today. Just as they said that and tried to enter, the front door opened. Michael? Why are you here? Came to cause more trouble? Michael, come on, you're old enough to be independent. David said with a look of exasperation. Beside him were his wife and their 2 children. The younger son's family had come to visit because the new house was completed. After arriving and settling in, they had gone to a nearby convenience store. Who's that? Are they bad people? My grandchildren, in 5th and 3rd grade, asked innocently. As my husband was about to send my eldest son and his wife away, he seemed to have an idea. David and his family will be staying for a week, you 2 can stay as well. But don't think you can live here permanently, he said. Inviting everyone inside. The eldest son and his wife lounged on the sofa first. I'm tired. Emily, coffee, please. I want one without sugar and milk. They demanded as usual, shocking David's wife. Then the grandchildren approached and asked. Why can't Auntie and Uncle do it themselves if they're adults? I can pour my own juice, and I'm just a kid. Chastised by the innocent grandchildren, Susan felt so uncomfortable that she went to pour her own coffee. The why attacks from the grandchildren continued. Why can't Auntie cook? My mom can make anything. Why doesn't Uncle clean up after himself? Dad and I always clean our plates after eating. Why can't you do it yourself? My sister and I do. The grandchildren, well raised by David's wife, were diligent and always helped out, showing the stark contrast with my eldest son and his wife. David and his wife cooperated well, sharing the household responsibilities. So, the grandchildren were puzzled why my eldest son and his wife couldn't do things for themselves. Initially, the couple retorted, but the relentless why attacks didn't stop, and by the end of the week, both were utterly exhausted. Especially Susan, who seemed to have an issue with being called Auntie, and angrily told the grandchildren not to call her that. But when the children innocently asked, why not? You are an auntie, aren't you? You're not young enough to be called sissy. She was visibly shocked. David, my son, and I couldn't help but laugh at this. After the younger son's family left, we sent my eldest son and his wife away. Perhaps due to the exhaustion from the grandchildren's constant questioning, they left without much resistance. However, a few months later, they contacted us asking to borrow money. When they lived with us without paying rent or contributing to household expenses, Michael's convenience store job sufficed for them. But after being kicked out, they had to pay their own rent and living expenses. They continued spending without saving. And apparently were living off debts. The only income was from Michael's part-time job, 4 days a week. His wife didn't even try to work. Their audacity to ask for money in such a situation was beyond belief. We will never lend you money or help you in any way, I said and blocked Michael's number. A few days later, while my husband and I were out, our home security company contacted us about an intruder. The footage showed my eldest son and his wife sneaking in through a window, attempting to steal money due to their financial desperation. It was pitiful that they resorted to breaking into their parents' home for money. Fortunately, they hadn't caused trouble for others yet. They were soon apprehended by security and taken by the police. Although released due to being family, they were severely reprimanded. Since then, they stopped trying to intrude or impose on us. My husband and I had blocked their numbers, so no more calls came. David mentioned that they had contacted him asking to borrow money. Apparently, they had borrowed from loan sharks and were now unable to repay, running from their debts. It's their own fault. They should repay their own debts, he said and blocked Michael's number too. We don't know what happened to them after that, but we decided to forget about people who could laugh after dousing a sick person with beer. With no more contact with them, my husband and I are enjoying our peaceful days. He used to teach calligraphy at the community center but now does it in a room at home, which was built especially for that. We had a spacious room built specifically for that purpose. When the younger son's family visits, the grandchildren learn calligraphy with other kids, making friends and having fun. I am grateful for our peaceful daily life and cherish every day.